From mystical tales to mythology to the formation of political civilizations, these are the great stories that surround ancient Egypt. Do you want to know how all these elements come together? How did the civilization begin? Stick around and let's find out. So, my old sports, this is EdDevelop, where you will find the best scientific and similar curiosities. I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell to enrich your day every time we upload a new video. If you want to actively help us grow, consider our Patreon. Find the link below in the description. I assure you, it will be one of the best decisions you'll ever make. Now, it is time for the fun part. How do you explain all the magic and mysticism in everything that has to do with politics? Egypt is a cradle of inexhaustible myths and a source of fascination. The historical value of its culture has inspired and intrigued scientists, artists, and curious people of all kinds for millennia. However, despite the vastness of its appeal, there are two recurring themes for those who seek to know more about the ancient Egyptians: their structure and all the mysticism that goes with it. Did you know that the Egyptians had a special word to describe the magic that surrounded their entire culture? The Egyptians believed strongly in Heka, the power of magic. Nothing in the universe was conceivable without being animated by this power. The very existence of the world was, to them, proof of the existence of that power, just as divinity or the supreme being is to other religions. That was magic to them. And from there, everything that this civilization created follows. But how important was magic in ancient Egypt? Magic played a fundamental role for the inhabitants of the Nile. It was vital to the proper functioning not only of the state, but of the universe itself. Imagine a world without oxygen. That was the Heka for them. In the Egyptian worldview, the entire universe emerged from the waters of the Nun, an ocean in which all its currents contained the gods themselves, from their laws to the basic way of life. Therefore, everything we know so far came from this ocean, something like the conception in the Catholic religion or the Big Bang Theory. Could you look at this theory? Let's develop the subject first. And how did they justify all these theories? They didn't just have to explain it, it was a collective affirmation of their beliefs. And besides, according to them, the Heka was the vital force through which they had a connection with the divine and allowed them to maintain the balance between the universe and the earth. Only the gods, magicians, and pharaohs possessed Heka. They had this magical power that was connected to the creation itself and that held it up and allowed them to manipulate the universe. Heka was everywhere, and learning to master this ancestral power was equivalent to having the power of creation and the gods. Basically, all the intertwining of politics, civilization, and divinity comes from this concept. There was someone who was responsible for the communication between the earth and the divinity. Can you imagine who it would be? Tell us in the comments if you know who was in charge. Who was the pharaoh in all this? Well, I tell you that among those who possessed the power of such magic were the pharaohs. These had a special priest who interpreted their dreams as a divine connection and were even their advisors, who helped him to discern in matters of justice and war. And where did the figure of the pharaoh fit into all of this? The magician par excellence, like the priest par excellence, is the pharaoh. His royal status as son of Horus filled him with magical power, a power that all Egyptians took very seriously. The power emanating from the pharaoh permeates his clothes and the objects that come into contact with him, a dangerous power that could be harmful, even deadly, if not handled properly. There was no such choice between the gods and the pharaohs. The best way to explain it is to say that the pharaohs were the messengers of the gods on earth, enforcing their designs. Basically, the pharaoh had the power of Heka to be practically a god on earth. Do you remember a similar story in our history? If you are religious, you probably do. An example of this power can be seen in the tomb of Rur, who is said to have had the terrible misfortune of being accidentally touched by Pharaoh Neferkari. To reassure him, the pharaoh said, "You will be fine," and then exclaimed, "It is the wish of my royal majesty that this man be well, that nothing happens to him." Do you get an idea of the power of magic, and which was taken very seriously by the inhabitants of the Nile? Magic was part of all aspects of Egyptian life and all social classes. Can you imagine life today? Who would not want to be a pharaoh today? And the fact is, to what extent was magic used? It was part of every aspect of Egyptian life. From the way they dressed, to the way they raised their children, to the way they fed themselves. There was a state magic, responsible for medicine and healing, for maintaining the cosmic balance, and for subjugating the enemies of the nation. But there were also, among the common people, people who devoted themselves to divination, to healing, to performing protective spells, and to many other techniques of divination, all of whom wanted or longed to have at least a third of the power that the pharaohs had. And of course, the principles on which the magic practiced by the priest was based and the magic practiced by ordinary citizens, who consulted magicians, healers, and local seers, were basically the same, and were used in both extraordinary and everyday situations. It was common, but was it considered dangerous? This harmful, but legal, magic was considered dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. One of the symptoms that things were going wrong in Egyptian society and that the social order was breaking down was the spread of magical knowledge. Everyone wanted power, to be part of the divine connection. And did it work against them, my old sport? And it is that certain types of pessimistic literature, written in the so-called intermediate periods of severe political, economic, and social crisis, describe, among the many evils that afflict society, the fact that magical knowledge is no longer in the hands of trained magical priests, but has fallen into the hands of the vulgar, who will put it to bad use. Just like when power falls into the hands of terribly dangerous and dictatorial people with a lust for power. Just like that. In fact, in the so-called late period, when Egypt fell under Greek and later Roman rule, a large number of spell books appeared in which Egyptian magic coexisted with that of its neighbors, reflecting an unprecedented synchronicity of beliefs and magical procedures. In them, we can already speak openly of black magic, if we define it as that which is practiced exclusively for selfish purposes. In this period, for example, there is a plethora of love spells to subdue the victim, or hate spells to kill opponents who compete with the sorcerer or his client, whether in love, justice, or business. All this confusion of magic sounds strange when compared to the modern world, but for this civilization, it meant the end. People trying to get power where they cannot, and hating those who could undoubtedly show us that the thirst for power can destroy anything that gets in its way. Just as magic built this civilization, it also ended it. What do you think? Do you think that the gods allowed this to happen in order to start another cycle of civilization? Could it be that what we now know as our history and our god comes from this time? Tell us what you think in the comments. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. Let us know what you think in the comments or what topic you would like us to cover in a future video. My old sports, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. See you next time.